Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Smarter Podcasting. So I have two special offers that I'm doing right now for just two people. The first one is the Podcast Launch Lab, and that's how you can get your podcast started in just 14 days. So the first one is the Podcast Launch Lab, and within 14 days, we can get you and your podcast started. We'll start off on day one with a deep dive strategy session with me. You'll get unlimited messaging support throughout this time as well. We'll do a momentum check-in call after 8 days. And then on day 14, we're going to prep your podcast and launch it. During this time, you will get a podcast planning checklist, an episode format template, a content calendar template, a growth tracking sheet, and a submission guide to make sure that you're on Apple and Spotify and all of those places as well. And to top it all off, after 90 days, you're going to get a follow-up call with me to see how it's going, making sure that all your systems are still working and where you should go next. So in just 14 days, you're going to walk away with 2 hours with me. You're going to have a clear, focused podcast concept that you're proud of. You're going to have all your gear sorted so you're not wasting time Googling or buying things that don't work. You'll have your show format, your intro, your outro, and all your trailers ready to go. You should have your first 3 episodes in progress or recorded and a plan to launch on all platforms so that you can launch with confidence. So if you are interested in this, just go to my website, 7millionbikes.com/podcast-launch-lab. If you can't remember that, you can get it in the show notes. The second offer is for those of you who may be listening to this that already have a podcast, and that's called the Podcast Makeover. In 14 days, we're going to give your existing podcast a makeover to make it sound amazing. So day one's going to start with a kickoff call with me, just 30 minutes. So we'll discuss your goals, your pain points, your workflow, and your tech setup. We'll do a quick pulse check, see how everything's going and how your overall podcast presents itself. Then I'm going to do an audit of your existing podcast. And on day 4, I'm going to give you the feedback from that audit. Meaning then on day 7, I'm going to follow up with you to see if you've started to make these changes and make sure you refine them before you publish your next episode. Then on day 14, we're going to do a final evaluation. So we'll review your latest episode, see what's improved, and lock in what to keep doing and maybe what to stop. And we'll not just finish there. On day 90, we're going to have a follow-up call to make sure that you've kept on track, you kept that momentum up. We'll celebrate the wins and we'll plan the next 90 days. In the podcast makeover, you're going to walk away with a fix-it checklist, an audio editing quick wins list, branding and clarity tips, and growth levers tailored just for you. And just like in the last one as well, you get unlimited messaging to me for 14 days. You can just imagine that I'm in your pocket at all time and you can ask me anything you want. If this is for you, then just go to 7millionbikes.com/podcast-makeover. And again, you can just go to the show notes, or if you just want to get in touch with me, it's neil@7millionbikes.com, or go to any of our social medias and send me a message, and I can help your podcast sound like a pro, or I can help you get your podcast started in the next 14 days. All right, let's get to the episode. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.
You build authentic relationships. Think about that content that put out a year later. If you just keep consistently doing it, that content lives on. You don't know who's going to see it. You don't know where it's going to go. You still build your know, like, and trust. So the ROI is truly there in so many capacities.
Welcome to another episode of Smarter Podcasting with me, your host, Neil Mackay, the podcast guy. I fell in love with podcasts right back in the beginning with the Ricky Gervais show when I used to listen on something called an iPod on the way to university. And then in 2019, fast forward all those years later, I started my own podcast called A Vietnam Podcast, where I wanted to share stories of people connected to Vietnam. That podcast became pretty successful. It's the longest running English language podcast in Vietnam. We're in the top 5% of podcasts worldwide as well, and we have listeners all over the world. So it's really, really incredible. So we've worked with over 60 podcasts. We've helped with thousands of episodes, millions of downloads, and helped podcasts get to the top of the charts. So if you want to work with 7 Million Bikes Podcast, we would love to work with you. I also started this podcast, Smarter Podcasting, to help you make the best podcast possible. So I'll share my tips and tricks. I'll talk to experts in the podcast industry to help you learn everything you need to know to make the best podcast possible. And today I'm really excited to talk to someone, as I mentioned, all the way around the world in LA. In today's episode, we're going to talk about something that I have been banging on about a lot, and it really is the crux of this podcast, and it's why every business needs to start a podcast, and something that we've just talked about lately. We've just launched 2 packages. It's why you shouldn't be chasing downloads if you want to monetize your podcast. My guest today has gone from sales at Yahoo and leading partnerships at startups to becoming the guy who knows someone or the guy with the answers. This is something I really agree with. He really believes that you never know where one conversation can lead to and how that can make such a big difference. My guest today is the head of relationships at RSS.com, one of the leading host websites that can help you publish your podcast, promote it, distribute it, and analyze it as well. And he is all the way, as I mentioned, around the world in Los Angeles right now, in downtown Hollywood. My guest today is Greg Wasserman. Greg, thank you very much for joining me on Smarter Podcasting.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to talk with you always.
You are very welcome. And this is proof to what you say about every conversation can lead to something. I'm completely messing up your quote there. Give us your quote so we can get it from the horse's mouth.
Life is about time and relationships. You have no clue where one conversation is going to take you. So have it. That's literally it. We connected through me reaching out, but I saw then through our conversation, it was like, oh, how do you know Mark Steadman? It's like, I haven't talked to him in ages. And you're like, oh, you told me that story. And sure enough, I sent Mark a LinkedIn message, what was it, the other day? And I'm like, Mark, I just talked to Neil. Like, you don't know where those conversations years ago are going to lead us to today. And that's the way I treat it.
That's fantastic. Well, today we're going to talk about something that does fall within your expertise. And there are many things within your expertise. And that is why businesses should have a podcast. It's something I've talked about a lot. It is basically what we do at 7 Million Bikes Podcast. And I was at an event last night talking to a lot of amazing people and explaining to them that what we do at 7 Million Bikes Podcast is we help you create niche podcasts for your industry. We focus on niche podcasts. I was actually talking to someone who does plastic injection molding, and they are interested in starting a podcast, which was great. Because what I was explaining to lots of different people, and some people got it and some people didn't, is because even one guy was like, oh, you help make podcasts and help make people superstars, right? And I was like, no, we actually do the complete opposite to that. Like we're trying to get 50 to 100 downloads of the people within your niche, because that's how your business is going to use a podcast as a marketing channel. So I firmly believe that every business needs a podcast. I firmly believe that eventually every business will have a podcast as well, just like every business has a website, every business has a social media platform. 10, 15, 20 years ago, they were kind of like, oh, do I want Facebook? Do I want Twitter? X, whatever you want to call it. And now everybody has it. So I firmly believe that that's where we're going with business. That's where we're going with podcasts. And so it's really exciting to meet someone like yourself who believes the exact same thing as me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I could talk for hours about it because there's so many ways that people are getting it wrong, thinking about chasing the downloads. So my background is in media. As you said, came from Yahoo, spent years in advertising. And I literally know what it takes from an ad salesperson. But as a show, if you're trying to chase it as a media company, unless you are a media company, you should not be chasing the sponsors. You should not be chasing the downloads. You should not be chasing the ad sales revenue that comes from it, because there's so much that comes from doing it correctly and having the right strategy that you'll see the ROI there.
So before we get into then why every business needs to have a podcast, explain a bit about that, because I get it. Many people might not. And you still, I have calls nearly every week with somebody who wants downloads. They want to, I had one a couple of weeks ago with someone that said, oh, we want to get 5,000 downloads. That's our target, without wanting to publish consistently was the number one barrier. I was like, well, you're going to publish consistently, but I was like, why do you want 5,000 downloads per week? And then a lot of people will start. One of my biggest bugbears in the world is blog posts that tell you that you should start a podcast as a side hustle to make some money, or blogs that tell you to start a blog as a side hustle to make some money. Most of these blog posts that tell you to start a side hustle to make some money, unless you're willing to commit 40, 50, 60 hours a week to that side hustle, you are very rarely going to make much money from it. Sometimes you might in that 1% case, but mostly not. So for anyone that's thinking about starting a podcast, or they already have a podcast and they're like, oh, my numbers aren't good enough, I really want to monetize, I want sponsorship, why is that the wrong way of thinking?
I guess the best way to tell it is through stories, right? So podcasting, the joy of it is storytelling. So I'll give you one. I was sitting at a bar and there was a gentleman next to me. I'm an extrovert. I'll talk to anyone. So there was a gentleman who's a lawyer, and we're shooting the breeze. And I'm like, so what do you do and how? And he's like, I go out 3 to 4 times a night. I'm like, why? He's like, well, I got to wine and dine. I got to try and get these big clients to become clients of mine. And I'm like, start a podcast. He's like, I'm intrigued. Tell me. And I'm like, well, ultimately, you could go ahead. You're spending all this money. Your wife must hate you because you are going out every night without her, spending all this money to try and get these people to like you, to build that rapport. Well, the easiest way to do that is, hey, I have a podcast. Would you want to come on my show? Now you're spending 30 minutes dedicated with this person, going like, hey, let's get to know each other. Even getting a feel like, is this a person actually I want to bring on my show? Because let's be honest, you may be a great person, but you may not be good on a podcast. So start filling that out. If you realize like, all right, this is a good person, you bring them on. That's another hour that you get to spend with this person. So you literally just spent an hour and a half with the person instead of taking them out and trying to wine and dine them and spending all this money. Like, you've now built a true relationship that's not only authentic, because in a podcast, like, you have to, we are spreading this message, like other people hear this. Person doesn't want to sound stupid, you don't want to sound stupid, so like all of a sudden you've now created this vulnerable space. But the best part about that is now you are promoting this person. So from a business development standpoint, 52 conversations that you're able to have, bring in potential prospects. Or maybe you wanted to break it up and say, you know what, I'll do half of my guests are case studies, like clients of mine, so they can talk about things that we do. And then the other half are kind of guests that I want to prospect and bring on. Where else are you going to have that as a business development tool? Otherwise, we know email is overdone. Everyone's doing the LinkedIn bomb and pitch slap. Like, all that stuff is not happening to the same degree. Everyone's just delete, ignore. But if you can bring a person onto your podcast, I'm having a one-on-one conversation with them. I'm marketing them. Best part, they're marketing me to their network because that's what you want them to do. So now, even if they never become a client, they're telling other people in their network about you, and then you're marketing them. And then instead of me, look at what I've done, I'm now able to say, look at what this person has said that my network, my ICP, my ideal client is talking about. So you've now created an entire marketing engine, well-oiled machine, because you can always turn that content into all these other little pieces. You're not focused on the downloads. You're not focused on who's listening to this. You're building your audience. The medium is recorded through podcasting. You're chopping that up. Maybe you're doing with video. Maybe it's just audio. RSS.com, we're only audio, but we give you the ability to go ahead and do it from a video standpoint. And then you turn that into a blog, newsletter, your social post. And now you're building your audience, not just listen to my show, but you're building it as an audience extension of like, look at what I'm doing, look what I'm talking about, look at my thought leadership. And if you can't close the business over the course of a year, goes back to my motto, life is about time and relationships. So if you can't close that business over the course of a year, either something's wrong with you, timing's not right, or you aren't doing a good job on spreading and building your audience, not just then the prospects you bring onto your show, but the audience that you ultimately are cultivating and connecting with. So now that guy, back to the story, doesn't have to go out 3-4 times a night to try and wine and dine these people. He can spend 5 hours on a Tuesday bringing people in, just like we're doing here over a recording, talk to them. He could, if he wanted to do it from a studio standpoint, rent a space, but like 5 hours now dedicated to content and content repurposing, business development, relationship, without having to go down the path of 3 to 4 nights of wine bottles and drinking. And now he can go like to the gym if that's what he wants to do, or a hobby, or the relationships now have more substantial weight to them because you've now spent 90 minutes marketing each other.
I mean, the whining and dining does sound fun, to be honest. I mean, let's not throw that one out the window. I had an idea as you were talking, like you could do a podcast where you're whining and dining and talking and recording at the same time, and then you can do both at the same time. Boom.
There you go. As long as nothing stupid gets said halfway through a bottle of wine that in this legal situation. But like, yeah, ultimately, there's so many different ways you can think about doing a podcast. That was just one example. I've got many that I can share on why I truly believe, as you said, eventually every business will have a podcast, just like every business has a website.
I also cannot agree more with what you said about the relationships that you build. And I think about it even from a different perspective, right? So I have another podcast called a Vietnam Podcast. So I talk to people connected to Vietnam, whether they're Vietnamese or expats, VQs or Vietnamese overseas. And the relationships that I've built through that podcast has been incredible from day one. I have friends now that I know intimately well because we sat down for an hour and had a conversation that you will never have in a bar. You will never have in a fleeting messenger chat on Facebook. And now I connected with them on a different level. And even one of my best friends to this day who made the music for a Vietnam podcast, and he's a music engineer, sound engineer. The music for the podcast gets more compliments than the podcast itself, which I still love and hate to this day. But he was one of the first ever people I interviewed for that show because we were just testing the sound. It wasn't even going to be an interview, but we sat down. I was like, let's practice. And then it was so good that we did it. I learned more about him in that 1 hour podcast, which, well, I say quotation podcast. It was a podcast. I learned more about him in that 1 hour of chatting than I have in the 7 years that I've known him, which is both sad and incredible, but that's just the way life is. But so if you, exactly like the story you shared, if you think about the relationship that you can build with that person in that podcast, but not even just that, what I love about it is it gives you a reason to talk to these people. If you have an injection molding business and you want to talk to somebody in the plastics industry, but you're like, I don't really have a reason to email them. The email's probably going to get deleted. Oh, LinkedIn's a bit awkward. I don't really know them that well. But then if you like message them and you're like, hey, do you want to be a guest on my podcast? 90% of people are going to be like, absolutely, I will. And then you get to build that relationship, get to know them through the podcast. And suddenly you've connected with somebody within your industry.
100%. And then like another good story is, so we got this lawyer, his clientele were large businesses, right? So it makes sense in that kind of story. But let's talk about a real estate agent. We're like, well, Greg, I mean, how do I go ahead and who do I bring on my show? If you like fishing, then your show is about fishing. I am Greg, the real estate agent who likes fishing. And the people I'm going to bring on my show are other people that like fishing. And so now I'm ultimately building a relationship with these people that we share something in common, but they're getting to know me also from my profession of like, hey, I actually do real estate. And what do you know? Maybe they never buy a house from me, but they're going to tell other people in their network, I know a good realtor because I spent an hour and a half with this guy. He's a good dude, loves the fish, whatever it may be. Like we bonded, and now there's your marketing. So if a real estate agent's always trying to figure out, how do I market myself, putting myself on billboards or whatever they do in Vietnam versus the States? Like they're always trying to market themselves. We know real estate agents do a terrible job, but like now I've now got 52 conversations with people that I've bonded over fishing with. Maybe I have become fishing partners with them. Maybe they introduced me to other fishing people. Like it becomes that whole trickle effect of relationships. And that is the joy of it.
And you just mentioned, for example, 52 people, you could do an episode a week, right? Then that person shares it with their network. So let's just say ballpark figure, another 1,000 people then see that episode. And one of the things I try to explain to people as well is it's not about consuming an hour of an episode. If people consume 30 seconds of your episode, one of our short videos got 10,000 views, the episode got 50. It's like, but that means 10,000 people saw that episode and saw us doing a podcast. That is incredible. Those numbers are huge. So when you start to build out those numbers from repurposed content, from people sharing it, you go from, as you just mentioned, this one podcast episode, which in my view may get 50 to 100 views, but suddenly you're reaching thousands of people. Times that by 52. Everyone always talks about ROI. The ROI on podcast is absolutely massive. You might be spending a few $100s per episode, depending on your service provider or whatnot. For us, if you wanted us to edit a video episode, it would only be about $250. And if you sign up for 10 episodes, it's cheaper. So you think you can get one episode done for $230 and you're going to reach thousands of people in your niche, and you do that 52 times. This is adding up to hundreds of thousands of people. And I love what you said there. If you're not turning that into business, it's not the podcast's fault. There's something else that's gone wrong there, I think.
I've been podcasting for years, and the number one tool that helped me become an award-winning podcast producer is the script. No matter whether you're a tech wizard or a beginner like me, the script can help you with everything you need to start your own podcast. If you want to start your own podcast today, download the script. The link is in the show notes. It's my number one recommendation to help you create a podcast easily, smoothly, and it has heaps of AI features that make your podcasting even better. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Let's get back to the episode.
It's you, but it's also the strategy. We go back to stop chasing the downloads. And so the the biggest reason most people don't continue on with podcasting is they make it from 0 to 8 is a struggle. 8 to 50 is unheard of in most cases. It's like life. It's like relationships. It's consistency. So if you are the business who's like, I need to close business now, well, we all want to close business today, but we have to be willing to go, you know what is my runway? I remember a story of like a bakery that opened. They knew that it was going to take a year until they actually were profitable. So what is your profit what is it that's going to get you to be profitable? What's your break-even point? And if you're looking at it as, I need it today in order to break even, then yeah, you're going to go down the same standard route that everyone else does. Let's hammer people with direct sales. Let's hammer people with emails. Let's hammer. But it doesn't work that way. So how do you build authentic relationships? But also, this is another thing I love about it is, good story that happened today. I did a recording a year ago. Out of sight, out of mind, right? That's usually how it goes. I get a LinkedIn message going like, hey, I saw this video that you did. Would love to talk. I didn't even know this video was being circulated. Next thing you know, I've got this guy coming to me to talk. So think about that content that I've now put out a year later. You're 52 weeks. If you just keep consistently doing it, that content lives on. You don't know who's going to see it. You don't know where it's going to go. And even if you're no longer in the business of which you are, you've moved on, you still build your know, like, and trust. You're still building the awareness, and people then want to come to you. And you either become the guy that people know and you send them where they need to go, or you're like, hey, I can take care of you. So the ROI is truly there in so many capacities.
And that's something I wanted to touch on, right? So ROI is obviously huge. Every business in the world looks at ROI. We all want the highest ROI. You all want to spend $1 and make 100, right? But that's not going to happen. I had lunch yesterday with a good friend, and he works in marketing for a major international company. I won't say the name or the industry, but major, massive. You'll have heard of it. Everyone knows it. And even for him, he was talking about what they do for marketing, and similar thing. They do events. They do everything. And I was like, is it really difficult to get an ROI on that? And he's like, yeah, really difficult, because we know it makes a difference. We see sales go up, but it's really difficult to be like, the sales went up because of this exact thing that we did. And then, like, in a lot of corporations and a lot of businesses, their new director of marketing or whoever it was has come in and slashed their budget 50% without really figuring out what that ROI is. And so it is difficult for podcasts. It's difficult because I do tell people, like, it's about consistency. It's not about 10 episodes. It's about 52 episodes, which is a big commitment. But it's like, if you commit to it, the ROI is potentially huge. And a story I always love to share is one of our first ever podcast clients, and we're still working with them today. Again, work in a big industry. I don't want to give too much away, but they wanted to create a podcast purely to send it to their customers and clients. And their customer client base was super small, super niche. They weren't interested about massive downloads. They weren't even really interested about it being on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. They just wanted to do something different that wasn't an email. It did get sent by email, fair enough, but they wanted to send it that it wasn't just one of these standard newsletters, right? And they sent it out, and I think it was like immediately someone got back to them and was like, hey, we absolutely love this. We haven't worked together for a while. Let's have a meeting. And it instantly turned into new business. And I don't know the figures involved at all, but I'll tell you, it's probably at least 6 figures, maybe even 7 figures for that business, for them spending a few $100s on a podcast. So the ROI on that is massive. And last of all, just last night at this event I was talking to a guy who he had spoken to. It was a really high senior official. I can't remember the position at a major bank. And though that bank put out research papers, and the bank official told him, we know nobody reads these, but we only do them because we know people think highly of us because we do research. Like, we'll send it out in an email or it's on our website. So they're like, oh, look at the research they've done. But he's like, we know nobody watches it. Oh, not watches it. Reads it. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, podcast sadly is similar. You don't need to consume an hour of a podcast, but if people know that you have one and they see the short videos and they see your blog, it really does make a massive difference.
I mean, that's it. You just cut it up. Like, I love to tell this story. There's every Thursday I get a newsletter. I wait for this newsletter. The guy who sends this newsletter has a podcast. I text him, like, I don't listen to your podcast, until he hits me up and he's like, listen to this. I think you'll like this episode. I'm like, I'm sure I'll like every of your episodes. I just don't. But like, I look forward to that newsletter every Thursday. He built a know, like, and trust where it's like, I don't have to listen. I know he has a podcast. I see his clips, like all those different things. I know they exist, but he's building that one-on-one with me. And that's literally where it's coming from. You're repurposing that content and going, hey, Greg, here's a newsletter. At the bottom of that newsletter is, by the way, here's my most recent episode of my podcast. I see who his guest is. I read the description, but like, I'm not going to go spend 40 minutes listening. He doesn't care. He's not looking at his downloads going like, oh, I didn't get the other download. It's like, I'm in your mailbox. I have your attention. You're reading it. I can look at my open rates. I can click. Like, you can look at those overall stats. You need data of going like, all right, not only downloads, but audience engagement. But that becomes the other thing from an engagement standpoint. If you're doing a podcast and you're sending that stuff out, you and I, we're speaking to the ethers right now. But our job is ultimately to go ahead and make sure, how do we engage? How do we create comments? How do we create engagement so that we can start building more and more one-on-one connections? It's not just the 52 people that we're bringing on our show, but it's whoever is engaging with that overall audience content that goes beyond just the downloads, I guess beyond just the podcast.
So why should someone not chase sponsorship then?
So my background's in media sales, right? So I got paid handsomely for a dedicated role to go do that. So let's go back to our lawyer, right? So if our lawyer's like, I'm going to go start a podcast, I guarantee you, don't know what lawyers make, but I know their billable hours, whether it's low or they're the good ones, are far more valuable for him to go ahead and spend the time on how do we become a better host, get better guests, build better content, anything that's going to help the overall marketing side of it, then let me go do what Greg did as a profession and go chase a sponsor. So now he's got to go, instead of emailing guests to bring on his show, he's got to go email and connect with, big tech companies or the right companies that would be reaching his audience. That's one headache that he's got to deal with. Now, the second headache is he's now got to spend his time, instead of getting new clients, talking to this prospect of like, hey, this is why you should sponsor my show. So I got to spend now time putting a one sheet together of like, here's my audience, here's my sales. Like, why am I spending all this time to do all those things? I'm not working on my business. I'm trying to now turn my podcast into a cash cow of sponsorship. When I'm a lawyer, I should be lawyering instead of sponsorship stuff, right? So that alone becomes an issue. Now, if you're going to do that, if you aren't the sponsor of your show, you're like, oh, how do I go ahead and get someone to sponsor it? Then the next thing I would say is start training your audience early on what a sponsor would look like, what a sponsor would sound like. If it's not you, the show's sponsored by so-and-so, start training them on what a sponsor would be, because the last thing you want to do is start chasing a sponsor and your audience has never heard what a sponsor sounds like. They're not used to that sponsor. And then the KPIs that you know to go back to that sponsor are going to be your downloads. Now you're chasing metrics that you didn't want to chase in the first place for what, $10,000, $50,000, whatever that may be. No offense. I know people that are niche that are making six figures on their podcast as well as all their core piece. So there are ways to do that, but that shouldn't be your main focus. You should have a business. It should be the core entity of it. It's your marketing, it's your business development, and the sponsorships that come from it. That is once you've actually refined it, figured out. If you're a niche, I don't know, you do baby products, baby toys. I don't know. Like, it's very niche. It's like, all right, who would I get it? Terrible example if you think about it, but like, you get the point if you're listening to this. So yeah, that's what I would say.
And I want to touch on as well the CPM, because this is something I believe from what I read was developed for radio, but it's applied to podcast and it's not really accurately applicable from what I understand. So what is the CPM and how does that affect podcasting?
Yeah, so it has nothing to do with radio. CPM cost per thousand or cost per mil. And I mean, my background's in display side. Radio would have been like, what is it? TVs, GRPs, radio. I'm blanking what radio was. But ultimately, cost per thousand. So if we're looking at this, you need to have 1,000 downloads in order to make X amount. And so from an industry standard, if we just look at average, it's usually like $20. You can find people that are doing far more and so forth, but like $20. How much of your time is worth? Let's go back to our lawyer here, right? Is my time worth far more than the $20 that I'm going to get just to get 1,000 downloads? Like, once again, you're chasing pennies instead of getting the steak, or it's a terrible analogy. I'm doing terrible right now.
No,
right?
that's a great it's a great analogy. I think the last I looked, it was $29 for 1,000 downloads. And then when you look at the stats, to get 1,000 downloads, you have to be in the top like 5% of podcasts in the world. So 95% of podcasts aren't getting that. That's fine. And I'm similar. It's interesting to hear you say that, because so my other podcast, the Vietnam podcast, we're about in the top 5 to 10% of podcasts in the world, but it's still really small numbers. We're not really in that like 1,000 downloads per episode, but we do get about 2,500 per month because of the back catalog is massive. We've done like 300 episodes now. But even with those numbers, and I do have a couple of sponsors, I'm making chump change, a few $100, right? It's not, and I do it because it's nice to get a little bit extra, and I like working with the sponsors. Like, I know who they are and things like that. But it's interesting hearing you say that, because I'm the exact same. Sometimes I'm like, should I spend more time trying to chase sponsors? And I'm like, just like you said, you got to make that 1-page sheet. Then you got to find a bunch of leads. Then you got to message them. Then you got to nurture them. Then they maybe want you to do this and they want you to do that. And I'm like, is that really worth all my time to get like a few $100? And it doesn't support my main business, which is making podcasts for other people.
Yeah, I mean, that's truly it. That's why we go back to the thesis here, like why every business should have a podcast and not be chasing downloads. You should literally just be using it for the business development, the marketing resources. Go back to your comment about the expos, like people doing conferences. They're like, great, can I scan your badge so I can get you in my CRM system so I can start emailing you and get the ROI and all those pieces? It's like, how much money are you spending on the marketing side of it, the remarketing side of it, the booth, the manning of the booth? So it's probably got to be good, but as I do, I'm like, I'd rather just be a free-floating person at a conference, not have a big fancy booth, walk around with a mic and just literally start, hey, I got a podcast. Can I just interview you? Have standard 3 questions. It costs me like $5, okay, maybe a little more to get like the little walk around mic that can block off everything. And I'm just sitting there like with my phone going, hey, can I ask you a few questions? Building the conversations there and stitch that all together. And you've got a podcast, you're remarketing these people, follow up with them afterwards going like, hey, you were on my show, let's talk. Like, that would be so much better of an ROI, cost you less, build a better relationship, turn into more marketing. Like, there's so many things that you can do from audio only, or if you want to add in the video factor, it gives you the cut up of there. But like, I could go on and on why you should have a podcast. And I think everyone that's listening, like, if you haven't been convinced, then I'll add another piece. You can spend the time, or you can use someone's service like Neil's to do it and go, is this what I want to be spending the money on? Think about it. How much more do you want to be spending the time doing whatever you're doing? Think about how many emails you have to send out to try and get a prospect to respond to a call. what kind of systems you're putting in place, the CRM systems, the tech stack, all those components, the cost of the reputation you're building, the relationships you're building, and the ROI of that long-term piece is going to be worth so much more than you could ever spend on all those pieces. Now, do them all, but you should also have a podcast.
100%. And it's interesting what you're saying about conferences and things like this. I mean, these sometimes I see this price list. It's like $20,000 to have a booth for the weekend at a conference in some places. And then even on the weekend, we saw there's a new business just opened across the road, and they had photographers. They'd obviously hired in like some beautiful host in a beautiful gown, and they had streamers and music and performances just to open up this business, which is maybe more of a Vietnamese thing. They have more of a celebration and pageantry when they're opening a new business, but still it was clearly a marketing exercise. Like the budget for that would have come from marketing a new business. They clearly probably have ROIs. They want a certain amount of people to show up to it. They want to get a certain amount of new customers from it. And I'm like, it's crazy the budgets that marketing have to do things like this. And I'm like, you know, a podcast is so much cheaper and easier and probably more effective. But I do feel we're just talking to the converted here. We're having a massive, massive circle jerk right now. Sorry if I offend anyone with that. But that is exactly what we're doing right now. So, Greg, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. I really do hope if you are listening to this, if you're on the fence, if you're not sure, get in touch with me, book a discovery call. I will be happy to talk through with you how we can help support your podcast. We can make you a super professional podcast. We can help you with the call to action, help you turn that into more clients. Again, it's not going to happen overnight, but we can definitely help you with that. So go to 7millionbikes.com. You can follow us on all the social medias. And if you do like this podcast, then please share it with someone else who also wants to make the best podcast possible. Greg, it has been amazing to chat with you, amazing to connect with you. Thank you so much for getting in touch with me originally. I'm really, really appreciate it, and have an amazing day. Thank you. I wanted to share with you about one of my favorite affiliate partners, and that is Fiverr. I've been using Fiverr for years for everything from ordering YouTube thumbnails to keyword research, writing podcast articles, even to Canva designs and thumbnails and more. So whether you're a budding entrepreneur, a podcaster, or anyone in between, Fiverr has got you covered. It really is the go-to platform if you want to find freelancers offering a massive range of services to help you on any project. Maybe you need a stunning new logo or just a short animation. Whatever you need, you can find it on Fiverr. What I love the most is how easy Fiverr makes it to connect with talented freelancers from around the world, all at prices that will fit whatever your budget is. Plus, with Fiverr's secure payment system, you can trust that your transactions are safe and secure. No dodgy people you meet on Facebook groups that disappear with your money and never give you what you want. What, that's only happened to me? As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you use the link and at no extra cost to you. As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you click my link and you buy something, all at no extra cost to you. And best of all, you will be directly supporting the making of this podcast that you're listening to for free, but it is not free to make. So why wait? Head over to somewhere that you've probably never been before. It's called the show notes. So whatever app you're listening in, if it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything at all, head to the show notes, click on my special link, and then you can browse thousands of gigs ready to help you with your next project.